Hey, what's up guys? This is Adi from Shastra Nation, and today we're going to talk about the cell membrane. So now that you're back from the intro, let's go ahead and get started. So cell membrane. So before we go into what the cell membrane is and other things like that, let's go ahead and discuss another thing about the cell membrane. It's also called the plasma membrane, so just keep that in mind, the plasma membrane. It's just called the plasma membrane. It's the same thing basically, but you can use it interchangeably and it'd be the same. So let's go ahead and discuss what it does though. What does this do? So what does it do? Well, first of all, it gives support. It gives support to the cell. Yeah, it gives support to the cell. It keeps things in line, and also it protects it from the outside world. Protects the cell. And maintains homeostasis. So if you don't know what homeostasis means, homeostasis is basically the term that defines how organisms keep the part of environments inside of them the same, basically. So it just means an organism's attempt to keep the same. So you can see this when it's a really hot day outside. What do? You sweat, and this is a form of your body trying to keep homeostasis, because it's trying to cool down your body and try to keep that perfect temperature, and trying not to get overheated. So now that we know what it does, let's talk about what is it made of. So what is this made of? That's a good question, because and it's pretty hard to answer this too. But mainly it's made up of these things called phospholipids. Phospholipids. So what are phospholipids? Well, basically they're these things that look like this. If you look at any picture of the cell membrane, you can figure this out. But they're these things that look like this, and they go all the way around the cell. So let's go ahead and just talk about what the parts of these actually. So we have these little circle things, and these are called the head. So that's pretty easy to memorize. So the head is hydrophobic. Hydrophobic meaning hydro meaning water, and then phobic meaning afraid of or hating water. So it basically hates water. And then the tail, this would be the tail. So that's pretty easy to memorize. It's just like a tail, basically. And the tail would be hydrophilic. Meaning hydro, water loving, basically. Water loving. And so what these do is they basically just, they have they just go around the cell and they're constantly moving and stuff like that. But there are also many other things that go into this. For example, like cholesterol and proteins and things like that. And so that's why we call it the fluid mosaic model. So fluid mosaic model. So the fluid mosaic model is basically like how scientists describe the cell membrane, and they call it the fluid because I'll just describe like why they call it this. Basically, like fluid meaning because it moves around and it's very fluid, and mosaic means that there's like a mosaic is things made up 100 like things make up one thing, and this is why it's the cell membrane is called the fluid mosaic model, because there's so many things that go into it, and they make up this membrane around the cell and protects it and things like that, and does the things that I've mentioned above, basically. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about some things that I haven't talked about yet. So cholesterol. So cholesterol, this would take a long time to explain what it's actually used for, but I'll briefly explain what it changes in the fluidity of the cell membrane. And then we have these important structures called proteins. And then in the proteins we have cell surface marker proteins. Cell marker. Okay, so what do the proteins do? The proteins basically just either allow the cell to take in bigger molecules such as glucose and things like that, or they do other things and have they either diffuse, they're used in facilitated diffusion. Or active transport, basically. So, one thing you probably haven't heard of yet is the cell surface marker proteins. And what these do is they basically allow cells to, allow other cells to figure out what type of cell they're dealing with for other cells. So, for example, if I put two cells together, from different parts of the body, they'd be able to tell what type of cell the other one is because of this. And this can be used for many things. For example, the cell will use it to figure out if a part of a cell will use it to warn other cells that it's been infected or something like that by putting out a cell surface marker protein. I forgot what the name was, but it puts out one of those, and it just it allows other cells to figure out, like, hey, hey, I'm infected, and the other cells will react to that, basically. Okay, so then we have another structure called the ECM. Let me go ahead and use this. So we have the other structures called the ECM. Job. Okay. Okay, so what is the ECL? ECM. The ECM is basically like the thing that's outside the cell. These are things that are outside the cells, but they're still attached to the cell, and they're just used for more structure and things like that, or to hold on to other cells and form layers of tissue and things like that. So these are just things outside of the cell. And this could be like microtubules and flagella, things like that. These are all outside the cell. Extracellular means outside the cell. Intracellular means things inside the cell, basically. Okay, so now that we've talked about what things are actually a part of this structure we call the cell membrane, let's talk about the fluidity. Okay, so fluidity. Okay, so fluidity is just the ability for the thing to move in a fluid fashion. So for example, when we determine fluids are basically like any gases or liquids that can move in a fluid fashion and can, spread out and things like that. So solids won't be fluids. And so let's just discuss what things actually affect the fluidity of a cell membrane. Well, temperature does. So at low temperatures, low temp, the cell membrane becomes more rigid. More rigid. And this is obviously, you can obviously tell, because the colder something is, you can tell that it's not going to move as much, and it's just going to become rigid and stay in one place, basically. Or move really, really small, not slowly, but with really tiny movements, basically. And then we have high temperatures, so high temp. And so basically what happens here is that, it just becomes looser than if it was colder. Okay? But this all changes when there is cholesterol. And so, like I mentioned, we talk about cholesterol. So if there's a lot of cholesterol, if there's high amounts of cholesterol, there's high amounts of cholesterol, basically, the cell will, the cell membrane, as the temperature goes up, it'll become more rigid, and then as the temperatures go down, it becomes less rigid. And so it's kind of the opposite. So it's kind of the opposite of that. Okay, and so last thing I should talk about before we leave is entropy. And don't confuse this with entropy, that's a different thing. But entropy is basically the likeliness of a disorder to occur. Likeliness. So it's just basically the likeliness of disorder to occur. And so in the cell, or in a microscopic point of view, basically in this world of a cell, there are numerous things that can affect the entropy of a given substance. For example, affected by. So it's affected by the size. Obviously, as the bigger the molecule gets, the harder it is for it to move around and become disordered. And the temperature. Obviously here too, the higher the temperature, the faster the molecules can move around, and which makes it more likely for the molecules to get more disordered or disorganized. And then concentration. So if there's a higher concentration, basically it's harder for the molecules to get disordered, because there's not enough space to move around, basically. And then there is change in charge, and pressure. Okay, so charge basically allows the change in charge, just like pressure, would allow see if there are multiple molecules that are all negatively charged, then the molecules would easily would like to be farther apart, because it's opposites don't the same size, same charges don't attract, opposites attract, right? So if there's a difference in charge, if they have the same charges, if they're all negative and positive, then yeah, they won't move apart as quickly. Same thing with pressure. If there's a higher pressure on one side, then the molecules will try to go to the other side to equalize the pressure, basically. So yeah, this is basically it. If you didn't pick up anything else from this video, the only thing you really need to pick up is this section right here. This section right here. So again, what does the plasma membrane or cell membrane do? It gives support, it protects the cell, and it maintains homeostasis. That's all you need to know for this video, but all of this stuff will help. So yeah, if you like this video, I make videos like this every Monday. So go ahead and subscribe. And if you like the video, like it. Like I said again, I make these types of videos every Monday, and so hopefully that helped. This is why I do it, to help people. But yeah, I guess I'll see you guys in the next one.